At the end of Jackson's presentation, we will have Jackson answer questions from those you provided when you registered to attend today's webinar, as well as those that you have during the program. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible until the top of the hour. Also, this webinar is being recorded and you will receive an email when it goes live. With that being said, I will now turn the time over to Jackson. And you should be able to see his screen momentarily.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Great, and I'm going to click show my screen, and there we go. Well, hey, thank you so much, Melody, for the introduction, for the opportunity to be a part of this. Thank you, everyone who is participating as well. I'm typically teaching seminars face-to-face, so this is a fun experience of trying to connect with you all, keep it conversational while we're all looking at our computers. So let's have some fun with this. I think it's very appropriate for the topic today. But yeah, as you said, working here at Focus, we do a lot of work in strengthening marriages, preparing marriages, saving those that are in crisis. And as I've been preparing for this webinar today and doing the research and kind of going back over my own experiences and the couples and the people I've worked with over the years, this continues to be has been and is growing as a problem and something that is affecting marriages. And so I'm excited to see so many joining into knowing that almost a proactive approach we're taking to this topic of protecting a marriage in a world that is consumed with digital content and avenues and all that's coming at us. And so I really want to applaud and affirm those of you participating today and those of you that will listen later. It is always a joy to my heart and in our heart as a team here as I work with Dr. Greg Smalley here at Focus. We deal so much in the reactive to marriage, and that's part of it, and I'm excited and privileged to be a part of that work here at Focus. But I tell you, there's so many issues I think that we encounter in marriage that if proactively dealt with, if we are building a healthy marriage, I think a lot of those problems we wouldn't experience. And so anytime that I see people, couples, individuals, families, taking proactive steps towards growing a healthy family, a healthy marriage, knowing in many ways we're avoiding a lot of those pitfalls. And so what I hope to do with you guys today, the first half being some content presentations. And by the way, I was pretty heavy on the content for slides. I typically am not in a seminar format because I'm able to kind of connect and do that and have a little less information. But knowing you would be able to have these slides after the webinar, I wanted to pump a little more content in there so you're able to have that access to that. And so a lot of information in there. But I want this first half, we'll just kind of present where some of my thoughts on this, some of the research, and then really looking forward to the questions on the last half of that. I would love to be able to dialogue with you all in that sense. And so what I want to do, we're going to start with just some of the statistics around. I think, you know, as I was thinking through this and preparing, you're on this webinar because you obviously get the impact of the digital world. You are probably involved in certain levels yourselves, and I'm sure you've seen, whether it be in your own lives and the lives of your friends and the lives of your children, just the growing nature of just a digital presence in all forms, whether it be at our eyes, at their fingertips, wherever that it is. And so we wanted to give you at least some of the stats. I mean, I knew a little bit, but getting to dig into some of the numbers, I thought it pretty interesting just to help provide the scope and the context for the larger issue that we're dealing with. But then I want to get very much practical and personal to where you are living your lives in the day-to-day. But so some of the stats, as we see, the fastest growing segment in social media are the 45 to 54-year-olds, and again, don't know exactly all the demographics here, assuming there are a few adults here with families that were wanting to tune in for this. 55% of Americans, 45 to 54, now have a profile on a social networking site. And really the only group that is below average is the 55 plus, but even 3 out of 10 of them are in social networking game. I used to work on a college campus, and the students that were obviously 100% involved in Facebook and Twitter and all the different stuff would often say how kind of awkward it was for them that their grandparents were now friending them and following them on Facebook. So even anecdotally then I'm seeing that. But wanting to point out these stats, that as much as we sometimes think of the younger generation as being consumed, or the ones using social media and the ones always on Facebook are always doing that, really within the adult population, a major part and a growing presence in that as well. And then I just looked at some of the main social media sites, Facebook and Twitter. So 488 million users regularly use Facebook mobile. I know we look at the stats at Focus, just ourselves in the web use. I think we're hitting around 40% of people accessing our content mobile. So really the number of people that are accessing that on smartphones. 22% of Facebook users check their account 5 or more times daily. You know, I was curious, just almost a little self-evaluation for each of you. I'd wonder how many times you're doing that each day. And so as it says there, 5 or more times, or at least a quarter, what I would consider a pretty frequent check of Facebook. 57% of Facebook users are female and 43% male. I know it's typically a little more close to the 50-50 on Twitter. And the average Twitter user has tweeted 307 times. And so wanting to point out just a few of the stats, again, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time there, but if you have felt anecdotally in your own life of going, okay, hey, it seems like there's a lot of this around, you know, either in my own home or in the homes of others, it seems like there's a lot of frequency. Getting some of these general statistics, I wanted to point these out just to show it's not just your gut feeling or your own experience, that we truly, within this digital world, we, as we're going to talk about here in a minute, many of us or those around us are very likely frequently engaging and even maybe consumed with that, and it definitely the stats show that. And so, you know, too, within the notes page, each of the references for these bullet points are noted. So if you guys want to dig further into some of these stats, found some great sites that are capturing all of this. So that's the larger issue. You know, we know even in a grand scheme of life and of relationship and marriage, we know that you know, marriages are under attack. We know that marriages are struggling. We know roughly, you know, 40% of all, you know, first-time marriages beginning now, or 40% of those likelihood of divorce. We know all the general divorce statistics and the marriage stats and those type of things, and then wanting to break this down even further into what does it look like within the home and within the marriage. And so I think pretty good picture of kind of what we're dealing with. And so what I want to move on to now, so those are some of the stats. I want to cast the vision large. What I want to talk about now are some of the pitfalls and then the impact on marriage. And being a roadmap guy, so what I want to do with some of these issues and what I've done in both through my own work experience and research and then looking through Focus, and I think we pointed out you guys will have access to some incredible resources just through the Focus website and some of our content broadcasts and articles and things like that. But I wanted to do my approach to this is to really start in almost on a continuum of the mildly annoying or just some of the very typical behaviors or pitfalls or issues that we experience in our marriage and within the digital space, and then working all the way up to the far end of the curriculum, which is some of the destructive impacts. So just as what you're going to see here is I want to start again in some of the daily and the simple sides of that, and then what we'll do is work our way up, and then from there we'll start talking about, okay, if these are some of the issues we run into, now what do we do about it? And so what I'd hope you each to do is, as we look through these, because it's been amazing, you know, teaching marriage stuff and being a part of what we do, it's amazing how often I'm convicted in my own marriage, my own life, and as I've looked through some of these issues of, you know, we just think, oh, it's just normal behavior to always have my phone in my hand or always be doing whatever. It's a good reflection point. And so not wanting to be critical or you know, be negative within this, but I just know it has been helpful for me on this side of it to, as I've reflected and prepared on this, to really personalize this and be okay that if my answer is, well, I need to work on that, that's okay. I mean, I think that's, as we talked about, protecting is both proactively approaching something, but being willing to make a change if necessary. So both in the evaluation of the people around you, the family in front of you, but especially even just in your own life and your own use, I would encourage you as we go through this. So let's start with oversharing with family and friends. And I would love if you were all sitting in front of me to do a quick little hand raise of if you've seen this happen around you, but it seems it's very, very, very common. And although we often get frustrated with our spouse and need a trusted person to debrief, I mean, some people like to call it venting. I mean, I have my own issues with that. My issue is if venting is hurtful or destructive, we need to be careful of that. But we need someone to debrief with. The public world of social media really isn't the place to do it. And I don't know about you, you've scanning Facebook or other sites that you're on, and all of a sudden you see someone complaining about so-and-so, or whether it be their, in-laws, or whether they're, their spouse, or whoever that it is, that there's a temptation, because it is so easy, especially if you're, there on your computer or there on your smartphone, to very quickly post something without much thought, and just a way for you to, in essence, to vent, to, to be frustrated, to just get something off your chest, as we often say. But being careful with, in that public world, then there might be the majority of the people reading your posts are trusted family members or friends. It is definitely not a safe place for you or your spouse to do that. And this became so clear to me. I was in out of state doing a marriage retreat, and was doing that for a church there. And I had done the retreat, had a lot of couples there, and went back about a month later to do some more work for the university that was in the town. And there was, they had requested, there was a couple that really needed, that was at the retreat that had been struggling with some issues, and was asking if I would meet with them, just to talk with them, see what was going on. And I figured, good idea. We had a common baseline of the things we were teaching and the vocabulary we were trying to build within our marriage. Well, one of the major issues, and there had been an inappropriate relationship that was taking place, but the husband, instead of going for a trusted kind of group of people to talk with, went to Facebook and started, sending some veiled messages and then some other clear messages, and really was just railing on his wife on social media. And it was amazing, although there was the issues to be dealt with. One of the things that exacerbated that, and I think really closed her heart and both of them to each other, was just how public they had made that. And so whether it be the simple things of, why does my husband, why doesn't he ever finish the to-do list, or why does he never listen, or why does she this? I mean, there are the simple things of simple frustration, but wanting to point that out because it's a very common and can begin driving a bit of a wedge there in the relationship. Another one is taking our anxiety out on our spouse, our anger or anxiety that you experience there on Facebook. It's easy to become annoyed or frustrated with a family or friends. We can even become hurt when we're left out of events or gatherings. And I don't know if you've experienced that, where all of a sudden you see pictures from some big thing that had happened. So you feel left out, you get a little frustrated. And it's tough in and of itself, but it becomes worse when we take it out on our spouse. I found this stat here: 85% of women are annoyed by their friends on Facebook. And I'm not trying to make a commentary on women. I know men are annoyed as well, but in one of the studies that was done. And it's interesting, as I was preparing for this and talking with some of my friends, was asking them about some of this. And one of my friends pointed out, he said, my wife is often just frustrated with her friends, with stuff that they're saying, stuff that they're doing. I know we often, we do the comparison game and all of that. And he said, I hate that for her, but I'm the one that gets the impact. I'm the one that really has to bear that burden with her, or takes it out on me, because as much as you've welcomed these people into your home, as you have through Facebook, on your computer, on your phone, the real life person around you is the one you're typically going to vent to. And so again, it could be daily annoyances, could be things that are not seemingly that big of a deal, but wanting to point that out, that if we are getting frustrated, if we are getting annoyed by the things that we're saying or hearing, being very careful how we share that with our spouse. It's fine sharing, but to take it out on, or to express that anger, again, becomes just from an annoyance to really another wedge driven based on that digital information, the other world we're living in, as we welcome those things into our relationship. So definitely, again, a very common pitfall that happens there. Another simple thing, so I want to get those issues there, but one, and I thought this was a great example. I don't know if you've ever been here in this picture, but both either on your phone, on your computer, together, but not really together, and how easily distracted we are by social media and just our phones, our computers. We're looking at some of the research here. 65% of U.S. tablet owners surf the web while watching TV. I know for me, I don't have a tablet. I'd love to have one, but I've got my iPhone, and I'm typically on my phone while watching TV. Among such viewers, 60% of women and 40% of men visit a social networking site while watching a program. And constant engagement with social media can lead to us becoming consumed. So let me real quick on the distraction part of this. Is it a bad thing to be on your phone, be on your computer, checking in on life? We were just at a family reunion this past weekend, and it was great, being together. But then I know there's been now, you're talking on Facebook, you're posting pictures, you're doing different things. So it's not wrong to be looking at these things or sitting there on the couch while you're watching TV, but we are constantly being distracted by this. And I know even in my own life, for me it's my phone. For my wife, it's typically the computer or Facebook or something that she's working on. And it's become a pretty common, part of the night or part of the day. But there are times we're looking at feeling very much like no one else in the world is around me. I have 2 little boys. And I can remember with just a shot to the gut a couple months ago, and I was checking email, checking stuff, and playing football with my son at the same time, thinking that I was pulling that off very well in my own mind. And finally my son looked at me in kind of frustration and said, "Daddy, why are you always on your phone?" And it just broke my heart. And I wanted to get defensive. I wanted to say, well, hey, I'm working, or hey, I'm bringing home the bacon, whatever, or hey, I don't use it that much. And then before I could even get defensive, I realized how true that was, of just being distracted from my son. And so the issue here, it's okay to be distracted at times. When we become consumed, really what another major issue from distraction. Oh, sorry, here, some good quotes. I'm going to go ahead and skip through these. You guys have those. I thought a great quote here was this therapist tells couples to show each other the same respect they'd give their boss. If your boss approached and you wanted to have a conversation with you, would you continue to surf the net while talking to them? You probably wouldn't. You would have the respect and the courtesy to look away. So being aware of when we are distracted, what is the priority. But where I get concerned about the distraction is disconnection. Closeness depends on this rapidly disappearing phenomenon of undivided attention spread over time. Just think how hard it is to complete a work project amid a stream of interruptions, which I know I am there daily. What you give up at work is depth, and what you give up in relationships is intimacy. And then disconnection can lead to isolation and even seeking intimacy with others, which we'll get to here in just a minute. But so like I said, distraction is a normal part of life. If you have kids, you know very well how often we are distracted. I can always tell if I'm having dinner with friends with or without kids. If they don't have kids, every little noise that our children are making, it interrupts conversation. And so they just keep stopping and starting and stopping and starting, whereas when I have dinner with friends with kids, it is amazing how deeply we can go in conversation with noise all around us. And so distraction is a normal part of life, but really, and this is what I found in my own marriage, there are times where I find myself going, man, I just feel like I haven't connected. There's great research in that we were just working on a date night broadcast here today that couples spend about 4 minutes in meaningful conversation. And a lot of that is business and distraction. And like I said, distraction, sure, we manage it. Disconnection really can lead to isolation. And so that we become roommates or we're existing in the same home. And that's where the kind of the Facebook, the social media, the things can creep in. Fine with checking it, fine with staying up. But when it leads to, and I keep talking about that wedge, when we become disconnected, that's where I really get concerned, especially because isolation can set in. And we are built for intimacy, we desire intimacy, we seek connection, and we will find that with others. And this is as we're going to move along the continuum of the dangers and the pitfalls and the impact on marriage, this is where disconnection becomes a big issue for me. And really the next step within this is we look at the continuum, and I know part of you have either heard about this, seen this, maybe experienced it, but just the reality of emotional and physical affairs. And a lot of this, especially like within Facebook and things like that, is reconnecting with old flames. And I'm often asked that question, is it okay? And for me, I know in my own life, and even when I was married a little bit younger, and so was, still in the phase of doing the Facebook and doing all that, and me, my own in life, just being very careful with reconnecting with relationships from the past, especially as I was trying to invest solely and fully into the relationship that I was building with my future wife. And so this is where a lot of this happens. It's just a simple reconnection via social media. Great quote, we're coming across it more and more. Clinical psychologist, one spouse connects online with someone they knew from high school. The person is emotionally available and they start communicating through Facebook within a short amount of time. The sharing of personal stories can lead to a deepened sense of intimacy, which in turn can point the couple in the direction of physical contact. See, it's so easy to connect with that old flame. Part of it is, whether it be via social media, digital, or in person, whatever, I mean, we just know from a relationship perspective, you reconnect and, you know, the almost reliving those glory days. We see those only as perfect. Well, just imagine that, oh, if only I would have with this person, I would never be experiencing. I'm a big sports guy. I was just talking with some of the family this weekend, and raising sons and having played sports, you know, I always heard this quote, the older I get, the better I was. You know, so all of a sudden I average more points a game and I won more trophies, and you name it. There's something about looking back where we almost glorify that time, or overly, you know, rose-colored glasses with those things. And often it comes from just connecting with someone from the past within that perspective. And I want to talk quickly, and found some good research here around texting and emotional affairs. I mean, I think we think of digital age as the social media and the computer, but there was so much research and an issue raised within even the texting aspect of this. It says the number of texting affairs is rising. What begins as an innocent texting or emailing can quickly become an emotional affair. And as the Bob Rosen line of Lehigh pointed out there at the bottom, when you don't have nonverbal communication, the likelihood of being able to disclose at a deeper level is greater because there's less inhibition. So it's going to feel like a more intimate relationship. So we're able to feel even more connected. We almost get to create that in our own mind, because we're exchanging information, but we're not exchanging any other aspect of the relationship. And just seeing that, just as much as connecting on Facebook, and just that real simple little message here and there and on their wall and commenting on this, we're building this connection, but it's almost being exacerbated by the fact that it's done in disconnection from whatever it be Facebook or texting. And then ultimately within the continuum, as we see divorce, the loneliness that results from disconnection can lead us to seek intimacy elsewhere, which may result in an affair. But affairs don't always end in divorce, but that then may result ultimately. And more than 80% of U.S. divorce attorneys say they've seen a rise in the number of cases involving social networking. According to the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, Facebook was the main culprit, with 66% of the lawyers saying that popular website was the main source of online divorce evidence among their clients. So again, not calling this cause and effect, not saying if you reconnect with an old flame or you begin that it's going to end in divorce, but what it was a great example for me that it plays a large role in the dissolution of a marriage. I'm convinced there's lots of steps in between, lots of choices in between. There's typically not one thing that led to that. But I think the power of this webinar and the information we're talking about today is this is the everyday thing that creeps in. These are the everyday small decisions and choices we make that lead to very poor decisions and decisions of greater magnitude along that. So there's the continuum, just the everyday sharing and the being frustrated and being distracted, you know, and then like I said, then we start hitting the line of being disconnected, feeling a lack of intimacy in the relationship we have with our spouse, and then again continuing down that continuum of isolation, disconnection, and reconnection, whether with an old flame or someone that we've reached out to and found, whether it be on Facebook, texting, those types of things. And so those are some of the pitfalls. So wanting to talk about a few of those, again, helping us to either assess our own marriage, but I know many of you are probably very healthy marriage, healthy family, and you're helping others. Well, these are good signs to look for. You know, I was hearing there was a study done that people, you know, often people that if they, you know, got something to hide, they've always got their phone down. If they're ever around their spouse, you can never see the text popping up or the Facebook popping up. I mean, there are little signs along the way that we can see the distraction, the disconnection, those types of things. I think important things for us to be aware of as we are in relationship with other people as well. So let me get to some of the safeguards. I know we've got just a few more minutes here before we open up to questions. So the way I like to just live my life, but especially as we work on marriage stuff here at Focus, and we're building resources and really trying to help strengthen couples. And maybe because I'm a guy that grew up in small town in the South, I like things simple and I like things practical. And so I wanted just to go over a few. We'll highlight them pretty quickly because I think they will make sense to you, but just at least giving you some very practical next steps and ideas for how to put a safeguard in there. So one thing is to share passwords. You know, just of having an openness there, of whether that be with, you know, Facebook passwords or whatever that it is, of being able to know that there's really practically, I have nothing to hide because you have access to everything that I'm doing. And around an open shared email account. I mean, I've got my work account that I have to use here for work, but my wife and I, from the time we got married, have had a shared email account. And so one that she typically uses, but some stuff that we do, but we both access that and respond and do, and that has just been a helpful way that again, not even cracking the door open for that, the wedge to be there, or just an avenue for maybe an unhealthy privacy that we're seeking. Another thing is to stay in the real world. You know, as much as we are connecting with friends and seeing what's going on and on our phones and on our computers, I mean, that's still not real life, meaning real world right in front of you. The husband or wife that's sitting next to you, the children that are in your home, of making sure that we're staying in our real sphere of where we're living and who we are and what we're doing, what we're responsible for, and who we're responsible to, and just making sure that we're not living in kind of this other reality. We're so connected outside that we're losing kind of the consciousness of what is around us. Another thing is to do regular check-ins to evaluate your amount of use and involvement. And this opens up to some difficult conversations with our spouse, you know, and what do you think, and how do you think I'm doing? And I was so convicted of this. I was teaching a marriage seminar, and we were going through some practical next steps, some of the stuff we're going to talk about here in just a second. And I just became so convicted that I was just on my phone all the time. It was always in my pocket. I was always at home. I was always checking in, you know, kind of what I was talking about with my son. Well, now, I mean, I came home and made a commitment to my wife. I said that I'm not doing that anymore. You know, I want you to know that I am all in, that I am fully here, that I am turning towards you when I'm here. And I've had that, and now I ask her, how do you think I'm doing? Is this too much? Can I get a few things done? Okay, no, I'll put. So really just being willing to ask how you're doing. If you've got kids, I mean, just as you heard the story of my son, really putting it to me, I you know, now can check in with them and how they think that you're doing, but just being willing and humble and enough to do those check-ins. Another thing is to have digital social-free nights, days, if you're brave, weekends, weeks, you know, the computer's away, the TV's away, the phones, and whatever that it is, of just kind of purging yourself a little bit and seeking to connect without any distractions. Maybe you spend a whole weekend doing that. Maybe you do a little weekend getaway. And maybe, you know, the only time that you're checking the phone is a text message from the babysitter if you have kids. But intentionally going about cutting that out of your life, it'll be amazing to see how much more you connect, and even probably how much more you even just get done in regards to relationships and even around the house by intentionally going after cutting that out for the period of time. Another thing, just simply err on the side of sharing with and not hiding from your spouse. I mean, I think even in my own life, I mean, if you're ever tempted to conceal something, a text, a Facebook message, if you're feeling like you're needing to conceal that or to hide that, it's probably a good sign that you need to share it, that you need to bring it out into the light. And getting just in a habit, even if your wife or husband's like, well, I don't really care, that, you know, no big deal, erring on the side of just sharing and bringing them in to those things. To the next point, bringing your spouse into growing relationships. I mean, there's a lot of debate on the, you know, opposite sex friendships and things like that. I mean, there are going to be the workplace relationships and other things that you're building, but, you know, as a couple, I always think it's great to have the couple friendships, and if there is something at work, or you're connecting with someone, or you're connected Facebook because you're both in the same area of work or ministry, just erring on the side of bringing your spouse into that relationship, just in a way of again, keeping things in the light, keeping things in the open, not letting a wedge or anything creep in there. And then finally, just a very simple, very common verse, but a simple way that I have found to be helpful as I'm online or doing what I do, is just in Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, noble, right, and pure, whatever is lovely or admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things and be focused on that. As we talked about being frustrated or oversharing or venting or walking down the path of maybe an unhealthy relationship, I think just such a great practical challenge for us of where our mind and heart should be in a continual way, especially as we're diving into these areas. And so, now, Melody, I know we just hit 12:30, and so what I want to do is I'm going to take 2 minutes here, and I want to provide a very you've heard me say the word proactive. So what I want to do is just give you a very proactive way of ensuring, number one, that you're investing in your marriage, and number two, that you're protecting it from the some of these pitfalls of the digital world. So I'm going to be very quick. There's one side here. We call these maximizing daily moments. Basically, these are moments that we all have every single day that we're doing something with. The way we like to put it when we teach in the marriage context is how can you strengthen your marriage without adding one thing to your plate? You're already busy, you're already overwhelmed, you've already got a lot going on. How can you strengthen your marriage without adding one thing to your plate? What we have been focusing on, spending a lot of time on, are taking advantage of the moments that you have in your day that you're doing something with, whether it be leaving in the morning for work or for errands, while you're away, arriving back home and going to sleep. Those are all opportunities where we have a chance to encourage our spouse, to affirm them, to kiss them, to acknowledge them, to build them up. You know, to encourage is to make courageous. And at those points in the day, and as I was reflecting on those and we've been teaching, these are often opportunities, you know, before we're heading out for the day, checking Facebook, doing whatever. During the day, if there's a break, we're typically jumping online, doing something there. When we get home, we're either, you know, jumping back on or reconnecting, and then going to sleep. I know often I'm reading headlines or things like that. What if we, instead of use those as check-in points for social media, for headlines, for TV, for whatever that it is, what if those were used, even within seconds, just seconds within each of those moments, as ways to invest in our marriage? And I'm telling you, if we are proactively doing that, if we're investing on a regular basis, you know, I talked about a lot of the issues with this or the daily things that creep into our lives. What we're doing is we are keeping those out because we are filling those spaces with positive interaction, with positive words, with connecting. There's no disconnection there because we're intentionally going after each other in that intimacy. And so just wanting to leave you with that of going, when you're tempted in these moments to maybe be distracted or be disconnected, being intentional about investing in those moments in your marriage. And one final slide there that you guys have, which just informative, got a broadcast coming with Dr. Archart and Sylvia Hart-Fried. They wrote Digital Invasion, and really diving deeply in from both survey and research and other, just going to be great. They've got a great book, The Digital Invasion, but the broadcast will be a 2-day that you guys can listen to on the Focus Daily on August 27, 28. So other good information wanted to make you aware of. Okay, sorry, I'm a couple minutes over.
No worries, Jackson. Thank you so much. So I guess we'll go ahead and just go right on into the question and answer portion of our program today. We have a lot of people asking similar questions, some great ones. Yeah. Jackson, if you'll first maybe address, some people are wondering, what do you do if your spouse is already in that place where they are overwhelmed by technology and very disconnected?
Great question. Yeah, first of all, I mean, I always want to acknowledge, I mean, there is that tough reality that those that are asking are living with, and so I want to affirm, and I just know that's a tough thing to walk into. And yeah, and I think for me, there is a little bit of a distinction. Well, I guess in some ways there's a distinction between, like, I know for me, often the temptation, or where I've become disconnected has been really because of work. I mean, it's funny. I'm not a big social media guy. I mean, I check in. I do. You know, we have some Facebook pages for some of our initiatives here. For me, it has been my phone, my email, and being consumed with that. I'm sure for others, it is social media. One of the things, and what's tough is to, and like I said, if I had each individual sitting here and getting full context of the relationships, I'm going to have to be a little bit general, obviously, right now. But if it truly is an issue that is affecting you as a person, you asking that question, and ultimately, obviously, affecting your marriage because you're a significant part of that. If it truly is an issue and something, I think first and foremost, it's start with what's going on for me. So do I feel disconnected? Do I just feel like they're always distracted? I know one of my friends, I mean, they've had to put a rule in. His wife, always on his phone, always on her phone. And even when he walks in the door, when they're sitting at the table, and they had some tough conversations about that and just said, I just feel like when you're on your phone, you're telling me and our family that whoever you're texting with or whatever you're reading is more important than that. So obviously she didn't think that. And obviously that was a very tough conversation, but they've been able to put in some good safeguards for how to make sure that they're doing that in a healthy way. Not saying you can't ever use your phone again, but how can we make sure in those key moments that I'm not making you feel second rate within that. So first of all, and the reason I bring that story up is I think it was important for him, and I think it'd be important for you, to identify really what's going on. If we come in there in a very reactive state of you're always on your phone or you're always on the computer and you don't love us and you don't want to be with us, we're going to automatically get defensive. Now, there's going to be a level of defensiveness, and like I told you, and my son even just brought that up, I wanted to get defensive. Now, it helped that he was a 5-year-old sweet little boy, so it's a little bit easier to hold my tongue. But if we've got to be clear of what's going on, if it's just you've heard the I and the you statements, I'm feeling this way, here's what's going on for me. So not necessarily coming at it accusatory, coming at it clearly. I'm not saying a roundabout, unclear way. First, figure out what's going on for you. And then if there really is an issue that you're struggling with, I think you've got to bring that up and to have that conversation. And be prepared for, wow, I'm so sorry, what can I do, to someone becoming defensive, becoming accusatory. But I think if you're seeing someone already in kind of the throes of that, they're locked in, as you're saying, they are distracted, they're leading to disconnection. First of all, in you figuring out what's going on for you, have you talked about that? Now, where the difficulty comes in, and I'll let you do any follow-up questions in Ms. Melody, but the difficulty comes in if there's either I don't have a problem or yeah, I might, but I don't care. Then where the steps become, and that's what I'm so thankful being a part of Focus is, there's really two things going on there. If there's not a willingness to change, and you've expressed that to them, I think that's where some good counseling, some good additional support from that, from you both taking care of you, of going, okay, my spouse doesn't want to connect with me, what do I do with that? You making sure that you're staying healthy, and then being able to, if the opportunity arises, and being able to do that if it's getting some counseling together. Because my thought is, if someone is would intentionally, you bring it up, they know it's clear that they are choosing whatever, their phone, their computer, their social media, or whatever, over their family, and they're okay with that, there's some deeper issues going on that just being consumed with the digital world.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, if there's any follow-up to that, like I said, being general, it's tough for me because I know we have our own experiences, but just some general guidelines there. But if there's any follow-up that comes in, I'd love to answer that too.
Yeah, no, you actually led into another kind of question about how you go about addressing those issues without making yourself feel defensive. Can you, Jackson, could you go back to this page in your slideshow regarding investing in your marriage regularly, and maybe address that a little bit more?
Yeah, oh good, and I ran through that, and I'm glad to have another opportunity. So as you'll see here, I'll go back to the first slide there, maximize the daily moments we all have. And then, we look at Deuteronomy 11, which is typically a parenting verse, but what I love that's in there, teaching your children, talking about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Where we see, obviously in that day and time, that was a very practical thing that obviously they were walking everywhere they were in the community that they were. But the principle here for us is we all have these daily moments. And so I'll go to the next slide of some of those. And there are many, many more. I mean, when you wake up, if you're waking up at the same time, for me, I've tried to be intentional, making sure my wife hears that I love her and I think she's beautiful. And how'd you sleep, or whatever, just of knowing that I'm going to wake up in the morning, Lord willing, knowing that at some point one or both of us will leave in the morning, knowing at another point, and again, not knowing where you guys, where each work and what they're scheduled. I can tell you, working at a big ministry, big organization, and I've had it confirmed from outside people that come in here, is that we meet a lot, and I feel like I'm in meetings all day, every day. I don't even know why I have a desk. But what I've tried to get intentional is I'm running from meeting to meeting is a very quick text to my wife that says, how you doing? How's your day? Love you, thinking about you, whatever. I mean, coffee in one hand, notebook and computer in the other, and I'm trying to type out a quick text there, but just of encouraging her in that way. And when I get home, for those of you that, and again, I know we have different work environments and things, but whenever anyone's returning, we always say, don't let the family dog be the one most excited to see your spouse when they walk through the door. And as hard as that might be to compete with a happy little dog there, the point is of stopping what is going on and just turning, and you'll hear me use the phrase turning to. We can kind of flip our head around and say, even now I'm on the computer, I can flip my head around and say, oh, hey, and keep on going, or I can get up, turn around, be completely facing my wife and say, I love you, good to see you, whatever that is. And then the going to sleep part of that is, we've said, what if the last word that your spouse hears is a word of gratitude to the Lord for who they are and what they've done and how much you love them. And so from a marriage context, what we've been trying to say, because I'm telling you, and this is where you've heard me say these daily things that creep in. Greg and I talk a lot about, Dr. Smalley and I, that there's a lot of major issues in marriage today. Obviously, there's financial meltdown, there's infidelity, there's the affairs, the emotional, the physical, all the stuff that we talk about today. There's a lot of major issues. But when you look at really when divorces and you hear the irreconcilable differences, well, those are often coming down to daily household things that we talk about. But where we're calling the silent killer of marriages is busyness. We know that everyone is busy, and I'm raising my hand and saying I'm guilty of that. We're busy. Kids are not. We're running, and we're often busy doing wonderful, wonderful things and serving the Lord and serving our church. And so that's the daily life and of distraction, and like I talked about, some of the disconnection. And so I'm convinced that if we're going to get couples to be strong, you work through the major issues, like some of these crises that were mentioned, Melody, from the questions. Well, you can't necessarily start with, well, hey, I'm just going to maximize daily moments and let my spouse be completely disconnected from me. Well, there's obviously issues that need to get dealt with. So I'm not minimizing or dismissing when we have major, what I call capital C crises. But we live our lives in the day-to-day, and as a team, we win together, we lose together. And often the destructive things that happen in our marriage are building up from daily losses, and often those very simple things, just like I pointed out in the continuum on the social media digital stuff, the oversharing or the getting frustrated or just always being distracted by something. And so if busyness is the issue, and if my first offer to someone who's really, really busy was, hey, take 4 days away, spend a lot of money, go do this retreat, and then buy these 3 books and read all those, they're going to laugh in my face. They don't have time hardly to do anything in the day besides what they're being consumed with. So our first step with this is going, what if you took advantage of the moments you already had? And that in a general sense in our marriage. And like I told you, I've been trying to do this myself over these last year or so as we've been working more and more on this content. I'm just trying to, I don't do it perfectly, but I'm trying to do it. But more and more as I was thinking through the social media digital stuff, as we're talking about today, I've even now been thinking, okay, when I go to grab my phone and see, how the Cubs did today and what the score was, I could actually use that to give my eyes to my spouse and ask her how her day was. Or laying in bed where I, check some headlines or read a couple of people I like to read and check in on, what if I put my phone down, set the alarm, put it down, and turn towards my wife? And so just those types of things of a very practical way as you're tempted to be distracted on the verge of consumed, hoping, again, because they've been so helpful in my life and many others have been working on these, hoping that this is a very simple, practical, easy-to-do thing that gives you maybe victory over some of the difficulties we're experiencing within the digital space, and then also just a stronger marriage because you're intentionally investing.
Great, thanks, Jackson.
Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that was very good.
Okay.
So we have some people asking, you had mentioned sharing passwords of a possibility to help with things. What are the acceptable kind of normal boundaries for sharing access to like passwords or email accounts?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about, and as much as I would love to say, here's the exact process, prescription, and the exact way to do it, I'm telling you, and I know many people don't like to hear this, there's some areas that are completely black and white, and you do it, and that's what you do. But within this area, I honestly think in a healthy way, in certain ways, there's a little bit of a gray area there. And the principle for me is, do I have anything to hide? Is there anything that I'm doing, whether it be on Facebook or that is there any text I wouldn't mind that made the front page of the Dunn Family News the next day? the principle there for me is, and again, whether it's I'm sharing all the passwords you're accessing, if you don't want to share them, why is that? And I think is a good question to answer. And if you are the one that the passwords are being shared to, if you are compelled 10 times a day to log into everything that's happening with your spouse, then I think there's a trust issue going on, and there's more issues than just, well, I just like to see what's going on the back end of Facebook. And so I don't think there's a hard, fast rule of going, you have to share passwords. It is a must, or your marriage is going to fall apart. I think it's the principle of it, and sometimes the practicality of just knowing that there is a level of accountability there. But I'm telling you, if you feel like, so that's what I'll say on that. So I don't want to sit here and imply that if you're not doing that, then you don't have a healthy marriage or you're not doing the right thing. I think it's a potential, a lot of those were potential safeguards. If we want to have some strategies and have some ideas to do that, that's an idea for you. Now, I will, but I want to make sure that as you're approaching those decisions, and whatever the ones that we did, why or why not, and really working through that. And again, for me, as I mentioned, I think on the second slide, was erring on the side of sharing and looping in and doing those types of things. If you're going, hey, you didn't necessarily need my password, but I will at least definitely share. I just want to make sure that, and I know I keep harping back on this, and I'm doing it, so I hope that everyone's hearing it, that it's the small, day-to-day, simple things that if I'm feeling compelled to hide, if I'm feeling compelled to keep out of sight, why is that? And is that door cracking wider and wider to an unhealthy path that I'm walking on? So for like my wife and I, we've had the shared email account. Part of it is, trying to remember 42 passwords has become difficult for us. But then, like within Facebook, she doesn't have a smartphone, I do. So sometimes she's like, hey, I want to take this picture, I want to put it up on my Facebook or whatever. So I'll log in there, do that, put it on, whatever. And so it works for us, and it's been fine in that way. But I don't know if it's necessarily a hard, fast. I will say the black and white comes if you find yourself hiding a conversation, hiding a relationship, deleting immediately and doing those types of things. That for me is a much bigger sign of an issue than I don't want to give him my password to Facebook.
Okay. Let's see, we have a couple more questions here I think we can fit in. What advice would you have for people in counseling capacities if maybe want to guide or discipline others in the right direction related to this topic?
So those that are our counselors?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? So those that are wanting, okay, good. Well, first of all, I know, Melody, I think at some point or one of our team members sent you guys just a plethora of articles and broadcasts and podcasts and things like that that are on the Focus site. So, and for me, I was just trying to do a quick pick and choosing for the 30 minutes I had to present the information. So first of all, leaning very heavily on Focus in that way of knowing that we have our counselors here that are doing that, and the fact that our counselors write a lot of the helps for that. So I always want to make sure that if you're not aware of that, for people to take advantage of that, and obviously relying more on more than just a 2-minute response from me. But one thing I would encourage you to do, and for those of you that are counselors, there's a problem-focused approach and a growth-focused approach, and I've come from the growth-focused. Problem-focused meaning, okay, you're spending too much time on Facebook, and you're connecting with so-and-so, so let's just stop that. Okay, done. What's the next issue? Whereas growth is going, okay, what's going on here? What's going on for you? What's going on for your spouse? What's going on for that person? Why is this here? What's going on below the surface, basically? So from a counseling perspective, I would encourage to at least begin with the approach of, let's dive a little deeper than just, I spend a little bit too much time on Facebook. Or you're connecting with an old flame or whatever, and you think it's okay, but she doesn't, which I know is a very, very common issue. Because usually the one building the relation or rebuilding that relationship with an ex or whatever doesn't think it's as big of a deal, obviously, as the person that they're married to. But I would encourage first and foremost of digging below the surface of what's going on, not making a bigger issue than it is. And it might be as simple as, when I, in the evening when I get home, I'm going to spend 30 minutes. I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to and if it's sports headlines, news headlines, Facebook headlines, Twitter, the 3 people, 20 people I'm following, whatever, maybe it truly is an issue of just time management, and it's not much of a bigger issue than that. But in doing that, I would just encourage, begin with digging below the surface, then working your way to some of those practical next steps that might happen. And if it is a relationship that is forming that never was healthy, or that never fully was, you hear the closure, but never really was put a bow on the healing that needs to take place, and you immediately were in this new relationship, now you're married, there might be a relationship that needs to be, cut off and walked away from and healed from. So I just always think it's good to go beyond just the behavior and below the surface of what's maybe driving that behavior.
Okay, great. And then finally, I think this is something that will be pertinent to many listening today, as well as to both of our organizations. How would you pass on the information that you've taught today to teenagers, to young children, in a sensitive way?
Good question. Yeah, so when you say young, obviously I'll stay within the time frame here, but there is the continuum of between young children and teenagers. I mean, you think of the level of autonomy. My children, my son just turned 6 yesterday, and the other one's 14 months behind him. And so obviously on that side of the continuum of age and stage, I can be pretty directive and pretty controlling. There's not a lot of autonomy on, hey, Dad, I want to watch TV for 5 hours today. That sounds great, son, because you should make that choice. Obviously not. But as you look within so I can regulate that a little bit better. We still want a certain, their shows or their TV or their games on my phone to be a treat. So I can control that a little bit more. And even though they don't know as much of how to maintain healthy boundaries as they will when they get a little, obviously we're all still learning, but as they will when they get older. And so I control that a little bit more for them, sometimes much of their chagrin. And the whole I'm doing this because I love you that they still don't fully understand, and maybe we don't ever. But I think within the teenager part of this, and there are some great resources even within some of the stuff that some of the stats I put in there. There's a whole website on teen stats and how prevalent that is. It's just amazing the number of smartphones and time spent and all this, and how just no understanding of privacy and things like that. And so I think in sharing that in a sensitive way, some of the major issues for me are, as we look at, well, probably kids of all ages, but especially some of the more difficult conversations we would have, is I know teenagers never feel like you trust them or never feel like you want the best for them sometimes when they go through those phases. But is amount of time of consumption and is one of those things. And I know some of you parents listening are having to make that tough call. Do I give them a phone? Well, if it's a phone just for safety, then does it need to be a smartphone if it's just so that they can call or text me? Well, then if I do give them a phone, then they text. Well, how much should they text? And is there limits on that? And then, if all the different scandals and the sexting and the videos and there's those issues that come into there. If I don't give them a phone, how do I keep, connect with them? And then privacy becomes a major issue. As I was reading some of those statistics, and I knew this was leaning marriage, so I didn't do as much on the teen and parenting side, but just amazing the lack of privacy and how predatory a lot of the online activity and the texting and things like that can be. So I think as in anything, whether it be within this digital space or their friends they're hanging out with, or all the major issues that we do, beginning with as much of the I of it that we can. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's how I'm growing, whatever that it is, even as parents, for us to be honest with our kids that we're growing and learning every day as well. And then expressing it more as I love you, I'm concerned about you, I want you to be able to, do what your friends do or be where they are or have what they have, but let me help you understand why either this is an issue for me or why this boundary should be in place. But always coming at it, I think, in a way, again, not of saying you're doing something wrong, I'm concerned because I should be because you're not in a good place. Again, anytime we're coming at something accusatory, even if we have good information to share, one of my favorite quotes as we look at this is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So coming at it from a perspective of caring, of loving, of affirming, and just all that they are and encouraging them who they are, and then coming at it with, but here's some things that I've seen, or here's some things I know that are important, and as your parent, I want you to either be aware of these things, or if you're making decisions and setting boundaries for them, part of the tough job I have as a parent sometimes is doing things that I know are going to be to your benefit, even if it's hard to see that right now. And I value what you have to say. I value you in this equation. And I'd love to hear what you're thinking, but here's some things that I think would be important for you as whatever stage they're in and whatever social media or whatever media they're engaging with, their digital device, of coming at it in that way.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jackson.
Yeah.
All right. Now, before we close, I quickly wanted to mention something that this audience is likely to be interested in. Some NetNanny customers prefer to have someone else manage their account password so they can't cheat and bypass blocked pages or uninstall the software. But sometimes there isn't always someone else readily available. So to help, as of today, NetNanny offers a new service called Password Account Manager to let customers rely on our customer service team to manage their passwords and settings. We have a new landing page at www.netnanny.com/products/account-manager if you'd like to learn more. And with that, it looks like we've reached the end of today's program. Thank you to Jackson Dunn and Focus on the Family for teaching us some great things today. And a huge thank you to everyone who attended and participated in this webinar. Again, this webinar was recorded, and you'll receive an email when it goes live. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you in our next NetNanny webinar.